Hey everybody, thank you guys for joining in for another season of Renewed Therapy. I'm so excited today because today is a blessed day, first and foremost, guys, because my friend, my longest, you can call her my auntie actually. I've known her since I was a little girl. Her name is Miss Tori. How are you today?
I'm great today. It's Erica. I remember when we struggled on what to name you.
Yeah.
We had an argument about what the name was going to be, but I'm glad we came up with Erica because it's perfect.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Well, all right, everybody. So I want to go ahead and introduce you. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is Tori Moore-Cofield. I am a resident native Houstonian. I've been in Houston my entire life. The proud parent of 2 children and 2 stepchildren that I call my own. I've been an educator my entire career for the last 31 years. And I am currently married to a wonderful pastor here in Houston, the Reverend Dr. D.Z. Cofield, and I'm enjoying this phase of my life with education, church, and all those good things. Mothering, grandmothering.
Right, that's
it's
right.
all great. It's been great.
That is awesome. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot. I don't always sit back and think about the proud part, but I'm pretty proud considering where we came from.
Right.
I never would have put myself here, ever.
And
But
that's
just don't
exactly
limit God, right?
Right.
Don't limit him. I didn't, and he's doing his thing. So
I
I'm
love
really
it.
happy with it, yes.
And speaking of, I'm just going to go right into it.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your childhood. What makes you feel like you wouldn't have been where you are today?
Well, I have a very interesting childhood. My mom and dad were both involved in drug trafficking back in the 70s. So I jokingly tell people, just to kind of keep my own sanity,
Right.
that I think my mom probably was instrumental in bringing cocaine to the city of Houston. Because prior to her getting here, it wasn't, we came here from California.
Right.
And my dad, what brought us here was my dad got caught. He got caught with tax evasion, believe it or not. But he was probably one of the biggest drug dealers in the city of San Francisco at the time. I was only 5 or 6. My mom had to come here because she didn't have anywhere else to go. This was where her family was. And when we got here, all she knew how to do was be the wife of a drug dealer.
Wow.
So she used that skill set in that way and got into the drug trade. She was smart enough to leave us with my grandmother. And so my grandmother raised us. And so we were raised in a family neighborhood where your grandmother was the matriarch of the neighborhood. And she was stay-at-home mom. So she took care of everybody in the neighborhood. My grandmother worked. And I got, at a young age, I understood what normalcy was. And I knew that was a good place to be. So whenever my mom came around, it was like, when are you leaving?
Right.
Because I'm staying here, know. And but I never lost as an angry child. Found a lot of comfort in the elementary school we went to. It too was like a family. I knew really early I wanted to teach. I used to teach your mom, your uncles, everybody in the neighborhood. That would sit in front of the dolls, whoever sit in front of me, or help them with their homework, help them with projects and everything. So I knew early that I wanted to go into education. And was blessed to have Miss Johnson, who was my principal at elementary school, support that effort. And so the rest is history. So but like I said, the anger, I'm learning, the hurt that I felt, I consider myself somewhat of an anomaly because at a young age, I understood what was happening around me.
Right.
I knew it was wrong. I knew that my grandmother's house was a good place. Even to make you laugh, when we would get in trouble as little kids, I knew to go to your grandmother.
Right.
Because she had a belt, and and I knew that if I would go sit up under her, if I didn't want to get in trouble, because I knew I just got it. Like as a really the other ones would be out cutting up, doing stuff wrong. I'd be sitting right there next to Miss Williams in the garage, listening to B.B. King in the garage with her when I knew trouble was brewing, because I didn't want to get in trouble. But I look back and say, how did you know? And I know that the Holy Spirit gets into you. You know when it gets into you.
Right.
But there was something watching and holding on to me as a child and protecting me that I can't really tell you what it was other than God's hand, at this point. But at the time, I just knew, I thought I was smart, But looking back now, it wasn't just smart. It was something else that gave me that spirit of discernment where I could figure out, even growing up, I knew how to stay out of trouble.
Right.
I had my share of trouble, but nothing like it could have been, being that I came from where I came from, you know. So it was great. It was great once we got to Houston. Once I got over the anger, I would say probably late middle school, and was when I really stopped fighting and being angry.
So let me ask you about that.
Mhm.
What really made you angry? Was it because of your parents and what they were doing, or?
Well, I learned recently, my husband's doing a series right now on anger.
Okay.
And what his research has shown is that anger is a secondary emotion
Yes.
to fear, frustration, or hurt.
Yes.
So I think that I was a combination of all of that.
Okay.
You know, afraid of, I still have vivid memories of what life was like in California,
Right.
and it wasn't good. And so that fear of going back to that, you know,
Right.
always, you know, afraid that we would have to go back to that. The hurt from watching my mom, you know, literally sell herself,
Right.
get involved in things that she shouldn't have. I also had an aunt who was a drug abuser, and watched her, you know, abuse my grandmother for money, for drugs, and rob the house. You know, these things, they hurt.
Yeah.
And then getting frustrated because as a kid you can't control anything.
Right.
So the frustration from not being able to go shake some sense into them and understanding that it was wrong. So it was a frustration. So I would say those three probably played back and forth in my mind for many years.
Right.
And which is why I say I feel like I'm an anomaly, because for all intent and purposes, I should be doing something else. I should be
Yeah.
angry. I should be, you know, not as productive as I have been,
Right.
because I had these reasons to not be.
Right.
But I know it was rooted in all three of those. I felt probably all of those over my lifetime at one point or another, sometimes all three.
I understand.
So just like now, him pulling that together in his series has helped me tremendously to just understand, like, that's where it came from.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I pretty much feel like I've forgiven my mom and my dad and everything. Not maybe, it's a work in progress, but understand that the only way I can get really past all that is just to forgive.
Right.
And to try to move on. And I think I feel pretty good about doing that, but the series has brought up some things, so I'm still working on it. So, but that's where I think it came from. Just, you know, being a kid, not being able to control.
Right. That
You
makes
know,
a lot of
yeah.
sense.
And nobody being able to address. My grandmother was tough, strong woman. You don't cry. You don't sit and cry over things you can't control. You just
Right.
keep it moving, you know. And so she never sat down and said, it's never gonna happen again.
Yeah.
You're never gonna go back there. So she didn't know how to do that. Again,
Right.
skill set. Like, she didn't know how to do it. And so I had to figure it out for myself.
Right.
So that was hard too, because I was always in this fear of, is she gonna send us away? Like, I was always trying to be a good girl, because I thought if I was bad in any way, she'd send us away.
Right.
You know, and so some of my childhood probably was scarred a little bit in that I couldn't really be all the child I wanted to be, because I was always afraid that she would send us back, you
Right.
know. And so yeah, those three, I think I could relate to all three of them when he started speaking to them. And now, like, being able to put a name on it and figure it out has been very helpful to
Absolutely.
me. It's kind of late, but
That's
late in there.
okay.
And if
That's
I can
right.
share it with other people, like I share it with people all the time, just like, you know, forgiveness is amazing. And I mean, you have issues, regular childhood stuff.
Right.
That ours were way deeper than that.
Absolutely.
I mean, nights. I remember once my mom coming home. We were outside playing, and my mother coming home in a cab. And I want to say she had either been beat up or abused in some way. Her clothes weren't fitting right, and she didn't wear many clothes in the first place. And I remember being terribly embarrassed. And I couldn't blame the kids for whatever they said about her. And I just remember thinking, I wish she'd just go away.
Right.
You know, just go away. Like, why are you out here? You know, why are you? And it was like middle of the day.
Right.
She just came home. And I couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 when that happened, but it's still as fresh in my mind as it happened yesterday, because I'm still, you know, kind of,
Traumatized, basically.
right, and dealing with it. So, yeah, it's made an impact, but, you know, I think God put me through, I know that all of that took me to where, when I became an educator, I chose to educate in the neighborhoods that were the hardest to work in. So when kids came to me with stuff, my answer was, what else you got?
Right.
You know, I lost my youngest sister my senior year in high school
Right.
to a terrible bus accident. Like I said, my aunt was an IV drug user who I lost to HIV.
Yeah.
It's been about 20 years now, but at the
Wow.
time, And we were in the house with that, you know, so I got to see it firsthand.
Right. So like all the drugs and everything.
I saw all of that. I saw her in her worst. I remember almost losing her to, she used drugs for so long. She had what's called, I think it's the way you pronounce it, is endocarditis.
Yes.
A heart condition that's found in elderly people from the drug use had taken its toll on her heart. And one day she couldn't even get up to use the drugs because her heart wouldn't let her get up. And we had to take her to the hospital. She's very comical. You know, she's in the hospital trying to get her fixed.
Right.
And I'm like, you're almost dead.
Yeah.
You know, and when she literally was dying, when I walked in the room, she said, I must be dying because you wouldn't be here. And I told her, shut up. I said, shut up, turn over. You're not going anywhere, you know. But living with that and seeing that dysfunctionality, you know, my sister was a very young mom. My nephew was born, I think, when she was 17. So we had all of this. So when I went to these communities and they were coming complaining, my mom is on crack.
Right.
And my mother, to this day, still uses prescription drugs. I said, so what else you got?
Yeah.
You know, my dad was in prison. My dad went to prison, came out, got strung out, ended up dying of HIV. What else you got? Right. You know, so we can go back and forth all day, but that's no excuse, and that does not dictate your future, because I wouldn't be sitting here if it did.
Absolutely.
And so they were like, she can't be lying. She can't be making this up.
Right.
And I had never had a problem sharing that with them.
Right.
So it gave me a little bit of an advantage. I tell people all the time, being in the neighborhood with black and brown kids, black and brown is not enough. Sometimes being Christian is not enough.
Absolutely.
In their minds.
Right.
It drives me, but in their minds, they could care less.
Right.
But when they realize that you are one of them, and you have roles above what they thought should happen,
it helps encourage them.
It helps encourage them. So I was like, okay, God, you put me through all of that because you wanted me to be able to do this well.
Right.
And I've actually had a great success in my work.
I know you have.
Great success. Like, just I couldn't even, and I wish I had written more about it, like documented what we were doing.
Right.
But I believe that was the driving force. Like, I knew from firsthand that you could overcome anything.
Right.
Because I did. You know.
So going back to your childhood times, did you ever feel like, because you had brothers and sisters, right?
I had sisters.
So tell me a little bit about them, because you said one passed away.
Right. The youngest one passed away, and she actually didn't grow up with us. She lived with an aunt.
Okay.
And we just saw her on weekends and holidays, and she was much younger. She's like 7, 8 years younger than me.
Okay.
And my sister, that was less than a year younger than me, we were together all the time.
Right.
And
that's Ursula?
Ursula. And we were like day and night. She was the rebellion. You know, she was the one that was going to push the button. She was a risk taker. I was always safe. I always said I was courageous. She was adventurous.
Right.
You know, so, I mean, I had courage, but I wasn't going to go try something new. But she, and our dynamic, we were all we had. And so it wasn't, once we got to Houston, we had friends, we had neighbors, your mom, you know, we had our neighborhood family.
Right.
And then once we went, and we were a family, there were several families in the neighborhood that we had ups and downs together, but we knew at the end of the day we had each other's back.
That's right.
I didn't have brothers, I had your uncles. So to this day, like just a couple of years ago, a gentleman went on Facebook and tried to say something negative about me. And Tracy went out, he in Jesus' name. Because I say that for Tracy, because he was a good God-fearing man. But once the gentleman found out that he was my brother, I didn't hear anything else. I had went to the police and everything. That didn't work. But when they found out Tracy, it was perfect.
That was it.
But they were always very protective of us. We didn't have brothers, so it was. And we were always all together.
Right.
Like we were always together. We didn't have money, so we didn't go to places and parties and stuff. We were a party ourselves, slumber party. We would all come together. Your grandmother would throw the first 2 in the bathtub that came through the bathroom. It didn't matter, male, female, didn't matter. Y'all just come in here and take a bath, and she'd sit there with us. Wash us up, get out, you know. So it was a really good family. So, and my sister, once we got here, she took that even more than I did. Like, we just really loved the idea of, she was always very social too. So she loved the idea of that. So we were as close as 2 sisters could possibly be. I mean, people thought we were twins.
That's right, I did.
People thought we were twins, but we really weren't a lot alike here.
Yeah.
She had a great heart.
Yeah,
I mean,
did.
she would give her last to anybody, but she was more of a, like, you know, super smart. I used to say that she could be the president of the United States
Right.
without any schooling.
Right.
I had to work harder. So I wasn't
get
as smart
it.
as she was. Not nearly as smart as she was, but you know, it was a great, and I always knew like she would protect me. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
She would.
She would. She probably still is from heaven.
That's right.
Sometimes I call on her and I was like, I need your help right now. And sometimes the lights flicker in the house and I wonder.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you called her, so she showed us.
I already know.
Yeah.
And then she passed away. What was it? 2012.
It's been 7 years, and it'll be 7 years in January.
That's right.
So that's where I keep up with it, January. So January 23rd. So we honor her every day. You know, it is. In fact, some pivotal times in all of my kids' lives was when she passed, because they had to make some changes because she made such an impact on them personally.
Right.
So they had to kind of grow up
Right.
in some ways, because things they tell her they would never tell me.
I know it. She was easy to talk to. You can tell her anything.
And I said, I mean, and things they've told me since she's passed away, I was like, really?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? My daughter said she was Google.
Yep.
She said, you just Google her. She said, if you want to know something, you just call her. She'd have the answer, just like Google. So.
That's right.
But that was interesting, and like, so once losing her was like, you know, really like losing a best friend. Because even now, when things happen, I'll just want to pick up the phone because she's the only one that would get it. Right. And I was like, oh, you know, I can't do that. So, but I'm really good with it because nobody should have to live in the kind of pain that she was in.
I agree.
And I know she's with God, so it doesn't make me really sad. I miss her.
Right.
But she's in a good place.
Absolutely.
And she's in a good place. And I feel her spirit all the time. Sometimes it comes up in me. I was like, okay, the spirit of Ursula needs to go back down. Be good.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that though. And I love the bond that you two had, you know. And then, so growing up, how did you guys get past all of those things that you saw in the house?
I don't really know. You know, I don't mean to sound cliche-ish or church lady-ish, but God, because I have no idea how we just did. I mean, my grandmother was super strong, and a lot of her way of doing things that kind of move on, things you can't control, don't try to control, kind of sit well with both of us. And you know, we agreed to let each other be each other. Like we went separate ways. I mean, she was in medical, I was in education. So we just kind of, and she was more, my house was more of a traditional home setting. I was married, had kids. She didn't. She chose another. She didn't want to be married. That was not her thing. You know, she did have kids, but very liberal. Yeah. And we didn't always agree with those kind of things, but we agreed to let each other be each other. When we come together, we're just sisters, you know.
That's right.
So, and she, the same hurts, I would say it even impacted her more. Like the way my mother was, because she really needed her. Right. And I didn't. Not like she did. Yeah. And so that lack of a bond really didn't, it materialized in her in different ways. Yeah. And it really was hurtful for her. So she got over it. But I don't know if it's genes or what it was, but we were able to kind of put things almost to a fault. Yeah. Because I think some things need to be addressed. Right. But she managed to get through it. So we both did. But there was still some hurt there. And it would manifest itself in weird ways. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, when she didn't want to let the kids leave the house. She wanted them to live there with her forever. Yeah. And I was like, they gotta grow up and they gotta leave. And, you know, it's this desire to protect all the time.
Because of the trauma that she's experienced.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody's gonna take care of you like I do.
That's right.
Nobody's gonna do for you
like
I
my
do.
mom.
Yes, yes. And you know, and even with your mom, like the trauma of losing her mom so early, because your grandfather, I don't remember him. Right. I know he was around when I was little, but I don't remember him. Mm-hmm. But so she might, because she's a little bit older than me, but I don't know how she remembers him as much, because he was gone. So her mom was always that. She picked us up from school. She cooked breakfast. She cooked lunch. She cooked dinner. She was the babysitter when anybody had anything to do. Wow. So for that to get cut short so fast, and to show you the trauma, I actually have no memory of her up to when she died. Mm-hmm. And everybody who I've talked to about it, that like professors and counselors say it because it's too traumatic for you to remember. Absolutely. So I don't remember her being sick. I know she was sick, but they're saying you don't remember because it hurts too much to remember. Absolutely. But all the hurt I went through, I remember. Well, I don't remember that. Right. But she was like my everything. Like she looked like a movie star. She dressed up every single day, and I just wanted to be her.
Right.
So I think that maybe that's why I choose, because I'm telling you, from the time she got sick,
Right.
I remember her going to the hospital. I don't remember anything else.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the funeral.
Maybe because you didn't want any more disappointment or hurt. You just wanted to remember she
and
was.
I just leave it. That's why I said I just leave it. I just leave it. So I know what her wanting to protect you all came from this leaving these kids, because they were kids still.
Right.
And and she had to take the reign of taking care of everybody. Even her older brothers were immature, so she had to deal with all of that. Right. So it's like once I get my own, I'm not gonna let anything happen to them. Exactly. So I get that. I totally get that. But y'all turned out pretty good.
Thank you. and okay, so I want to go here. How did having relationships with people, even personal relationships like dating, things like that, how did that affect you in any kind of way from where you came from?
I think early on, my mom's philosophy was find a man that's going to take care of you. If he have money, I don't care. He could be married or whatever. You go for it. And, she did have some influence, and I was just like, okay, that's the way it works, And something, again, in me told me it was wrong. I remember dating a gentleman that was married, and a friend of mine said, is he worth going to hell for? And I was totally unchurched. All I knew about church was Catholic church, and we grew up in a Catholic church, St. Mary's, and we had a flower business. So most Sundays we were working. So we didn't do a lot of church. So all I knew was Christmas, the 10 Commandments, I didn't know
the bare
much.
minimum.
Yeah, the bare minimum. I mean, I knew to revere God.
Right.
We knew that. I knew my grandmother prayed every night, did her rosaries.
Yeah.
That's about it. So when she said that to me, I still remember to this day. So it made an impact, and I was like, no, you're not worth that. And then that's when my walk started, was with that one statement from her. And so I think relationships, I went through the normal relationship issues as most women, I guess. There were some that were good and some not so good. I never was abused or taken advantage of. I never got involved with bad seeds, none of that, like what my mother did or my aunt. Never any of that. It was just normal. So, but I will say that I have had intimacy issues. And I mean intimacy.
I was going to ask that.
Not intimacy as far as sex or anything.
Right.
I mean intimacy, just letting people in my personal space.
Exactly.
To this day, I mean, I don't have a lot of female friends, and it's just a trust issue, and I think it just stems from all of that. I mean, you can't control it. I don't want to be hurt by anybody. So I noticed
You've had enough of that.
I noticed that may be. So I'm now just recently kind of starting to work on trusting and let more people in.
Good.
And my work helped with that, because I was the school leader. I was always over the schools. There was not a lot of room for personal relationships, because you never know when you have to fire somebody.
Right.
And my work was my life, so I didn't have a lot of personal life.
Right.
So the only people I really dealt with were the people I worked with, and I would only let them in so close for protection.
Right.
And that became easy. So now that I'm not doing that, I'm just like, okay, you got to do better.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
So what kept you from being the person that you would have actually become because of your surrounding, your environment? What kept you from being like that? I feel like I had this hand on me. Something somewhere was protecting me. And I say something because I just try to really make sure that all believers understand that it's a work in progress. Right.
Like believing and understanding how God works, it's a work in progress. So they may not I can call it God. I learned how the Holy Spirit works.
Right.
So I can't say that's what it was, because the Holy Spirit doesn't manifest itself in you until you know it does.
Absolutely.
I did not know that's what it was, but there was still something.
Right.
So when I was started going the wrong direction, there was something pulling me in another direction. I never liked the way it felt to be in trouble,
right,
or to be worried about trouble.
Right.
So I stayed. It didn't feel good.
Right.
So I mean, I don't ride roller coasters, not because I'm afraid. I've been on a roller coaster many times with students,
right,
because they couldn't ride along, but it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't feel good.
Right.
So I don't, So when I would get into situations that just didn't feel right, I remember walking down the street in Bourbon Street, and walking into one of those little boutique kind of places, and when I got right past the door, I looked at the people I was with. I said, I can't go in here. And they were like, why? I said, something's not right. There's a spirit, something. And I didn't know well enough to know to say a spirit.
Right.
It was just something saying, stay out of there. And I backed on up.
That's right.
And went out. And, you know, I just have had that spirit in me since I was a kid. So I just like knew how to stray away.
So it sounds like God's hand has always been over you.
It always has been. And it is just, you know, I thank him every day. I even try to, when I pray, to not ask for anything because I feel like he's giving me so much.
Right.
You know, I just want to thank you again. Again today, for today and for whatever, everything
That's
you've
right.
done. And because it has been an amazing walk, amazing journey. And I think the times when I got into that dark place,
Right.
it was always me. You know, letting the world convince me that what was happening was I wasn't good enough for that.
Yeah.
So I would not listen to God and say it was, and then I would say, "Girl, what is wrong with you?" Something would happen that would knock me on the head. I mean, something as simple as running into your mom.
Right.
It's like, you know, you come a long way, because that's memories. You know, it's like,
That's
you come a
right.
long way. And, you know, her saying, I forgive you, and me saying, I forgive you, and us
Right.
really forgiving each other for all the craziness we did when we were little.
Right.
And really feeling that. I was like, you are blessed, you know. And then it would snap me out of whatever that place I was in,
There you go.
know.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very powerful. It's a very powerful testimony that you have. And I know you have so much more you could say,
Yeah, it's a lot.
but we have to condense it.
Mhm.
So I'm glad you're taking out certain topics, certain pieces that are important to you.
Mhm.
So when you were talking about earlier, you were telling me about the darkness.
Mhm.
I want to hear more. Did you have any mental
Oh.
depression, or tell me about that? What did you
Oh,
go
yeah. Depression, my divorce.
through?
You know, just trying not to. My goal was to break the cycle of my family.
Right.
You know, with not having a family, the family unit, and trying to make sure that my kids had an example, especially my son, of what it should look like. Not realizing that I had no control of that. At the time, I'm thinking I got control, right?
Right.
So I would say mental illness runs in my family. I mean, my mother had a breakdown. I don't remember it, but I was told about it. And then just the history of my grandfather's side, a lot of, particularly the women, have had issues with anxiety, depression. So I believe that is real. I believe that genetics is real, and I believe that, you know. And so I was, because I've done so much work around it and watched even kids go into depression, I
Yes.
kind of noticed the signs when I see it, and I saw the patterns in myself.
Right.
Like my mom, every Sunday, it seemed like she got into this really bad place. And it wasn't because it was Sunday, it was the day of the week. It was the day before you go back to work,
Right.
the day after a really busy day. And so she was tired, and nobody wanted to be around her. And I saw myself falling in that same place. I would just be real irritable on Sundays. I was like, fight that. You need to let it go.
There you go.
Or when I would wake up in the middle of the night is when it always hits you. And I have all these awful thoughts. And I mean, I consider myself someone with of a pioneer in the city in a charter school movement.
Right.
I was one of very few African American women in the country that was trying to start a charter school and successfully.
Right.
So there was a lot that came with that, and a lot of racism,
Yeah.
stereotypes, all kinds of stuff that came along with it that would send me to these places too. Like I would be like, you're not good enough,
Yeah.
you're not smart enough, you know, and that would send you into this place, you know, like in this dark place, and having to pull myself out of it. I think the thing that helped me was recognizing that's when it was happening.
Right.
I didn't get there and say, oops, I'm here. I saw
Right.
it coming. I was like, okay, you got to do something different. I would change up my whole routine. I'd get up early in the morning, put Kirk Franklin. Oh, Yolanda Adams wore her out. Wore her.
I get
The ballot's not yours.
Oh, yes.
God, I don't know if I got $1 for every time I played. I could go to the Ivory Coast.
There you go.
You know, because it would, and I would hear it, and it would give me what I needed, you know, to get through the day or get through that time that I was in. So I could see it coming. I had, again, my grandmother was there most of the way.
Right.
And she would say, I remember once saying, I just feel just depressed and I don't know what to do. I had just had my second child. And I said, the doctor gave me a pill. She said, you don't need a pill, you know what to do.
Right.
And what she was telling me I needed to do was change the way I was living, like change, you know, focus, refocus, you know, rejuvenate, put yourself first.
Right.
You know, take care of yourself. Stop putting so much into those kids.
Absolutely.
And she read it out to me what I needed to do. She was absolutely right. I think I took the pill maybe once or twice, and then I didn't like the way it made me feel.
It was
And
an antidepressant.
Some type of, it was back in the day when that was the buzzword
Yeah.
for anxiety, you know. and took it for a hot minute and listened to her and moved around, and then have used that ever since. Like when I feel myself getting there, do whatever I can to pull myself out of it.
Right.
My kids would help when they were little, and I start feeling something, I would go look at them while they were asleep. Perfect. It was like, okay, you got too much to do. You got too much to do. They have to grow up and be able to say you are somebody.
Absolutely.
And then now it's the grandkids, I can't afford to be down.
Right.
I gotta make sure that they are as strong as I was. And I got mostly girls, so I want them to. I made a way, help my son. He's in the same line as I am. He's in school leadership now. My daughter wants to teach. My stepdaughters, who, like I said, I raised since they were little girls, so they're my girls too. One is a teacher, and one is a Marine Corps officer.
Nice.
And she's thinking about going. She was in education for a minute because they all had to work for me at some point.
Absolutely.
And she's thinking about going back into it once she retires from the Marine. So just work of service is what I wanted them to do, and think about how you can change a community. Like what impact will you have on a community? Like you can't just think about yourself. Now they have small kids. I want them to focus on their families. But again, the example that I made for them, I'm trying to encourage them to make the same example. And my oldest granddaughter is already saying she's going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
It's like I'm trying to talk you out of it. But
and that leads me up to my next question. How did you decide to become an educator?
I told you, I'm telling you, I knew early on when I was little, I was always smart. And and I knew how to help people with work. Like I was a great tutor as a little kid. I remember at Thompson, I think it was still Southland then, my elementary school, they started a tutorial program because I would help like first graders. I was like in the fourth grade. And then they got a group of us to help first. They saw I was working. And so like I kind of helped start that. And I always knew how to get kids to learn.
Yeah.
And so middle school came, kind of a lull. When I got to high school, I thought I wanted to go into radio and TV. But still, after school, was going over to Thompson every day to work with their after school program, and loved it, and changed my major somewhere along in there. I ended up going to school to teach. But I always knew that I wanted to teach. I mean, I knew it, but my grandmother said it wasn't gonna make any money. So
I've heard that before.
Yeah, you don't make money teaching, so I kind of strayed away for a minute, but I came right back and been doing it ever since. I was blessed in that my first job out of school, I worked at Dotson Elementary because there was no opening at Thompson because I wanted to work for my principal. That was my principal when I was a little girl. And the next year, opening came up, and I took it. I was like, I don't care what I have to teach. I'll go teach anything. I just want to work for you.
That's right.
And it was beautiful because in this campus at school, she called everybody by their last name except me. It would be, hey, Miss So-and-so, hey, Mr. So-and-so, Tori. And so it got to a point where everybody knew I was like her favorite. So when they wanted something, they would say, Tori, can you ask Miss Johnson, can we get some encyclopedia? And I was like, yeah, I'll ask her. But she totally groomed me up to be this great. Whenever any company came to the building, she'd bring them to me to see, because I was her. She was a fourth grade teacher, so was I. So it was great. And then before she passed away, I was able to dedicate the first school I founded to her. So the Kid Liberation was dedicated to her. There's a plaque there and everything. And she was able to come out to the groundbreaking and everything. That meant a lot to me.
That's wonderful.
So but I knew she used to make me read the Bible. We used to get in trouble. We would fight because we were a family of fighters.
Right.
So if I got into it, all your uncles and aunts, all of us would fight.
Wow.
It was awful. We were terrible.
But I heard
it was good terrible because it was our parents. Their grandmother and my grandmother, it was like if one of them in trouble, you better take up for your, And I remember Tracy and I were in the same grade, and somebody hit him, and they told me, your cousin is fighting, and so it was a big kid. And Tracy was little at the time; he was always the shortest. And he had him down on the ground. He was like trying to beat him up or whatever. And I went up and I think I took a book or something and hit the boy in the back of his head. So he got up like looking at me, trying to get at me. And by that time I had him distracted so Tracy could get his bearings. And so both of us ended up in the office. And I remember Tracy looking at me saying, don't cry. And I'm holding my face like trying not to cry.
Right.
But we all got paddling that day. But it was good. We got home, we were like, we all got in trouble for fighting.
Right.
But we also got praised for taking over each other.
Right.
Because we always took care of each other. So it was it was, it was that kind of thing. Like, so I knew how that dynamic worked. So when I became a school leader, it was easy when I saw family, especially family like us.
Right.
Because we weren't blood relatives.
Right.
But it was like, that's my play mama.
That's right.
And then teachers would be like, play mama?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you better respect her.
Yeah.
Because that meant a lot,
That's
because
right.
I would probably get in trouble for being ugly or hurting somebody over your grandma before I would my mother.
Right.
And she wasn't my mother.
That's right.
But you better not say anything about her. So I understand that in the schools and in our community. So when I was able to coach teachers, I could say, you let me explain to you what that really means,
Right.
and then they would get it. And it was because of my own experiences. So it was really great to have had those, and to help teachers kind of overcome the barriers in teaching, like the things they don't talk about in school.
Absolutely.
Because that's a barrier. You get in
Right.
there and it's like, I need to call my play mama. It's like that. No, we're gonna call your mama. No, don't call my mama.
Right.
They're saying that for a reason.
Right.
And you need to call. You need to respect that and understand where it comes from. So those kind of things have helped me a lot along the way in
I love
understanding, and it also helps me do research. Like when I remember my first years teaching, I had quite a few Latino kids,
Mhm.
and that wasn't my skill set. Like I
Right.
only work with us, black kids.
That's right.
And Selena died.
Mhm.
I think I had been teaching 4 or 5 years when Selena died, and I didn't know who she was.
Mhm.
I had no idea who she was, and the kids came to school crying, Selena, oh, Selena died. I was like, who was she? What? Is she a cousin? Do we, we need to make a card for her? And that day, that year, I made a vow that I would never work with kids that I didn't know anything about
There
them.
you go.
So I started listening to the music they listen to and finding out as much about them, so that when I'm working with them, they say, oh, you know about that? And it makes them think that, oh, she really does love me.
There you go.
That she's learning about who I am.
Right.
And it just kind of gave me a new outlook. So I try to find out culturally what's going on in all communities so that I can better serve, the
love
community that I'm working in. It was good. That's a Selena thing. I'm telling you.
I wish I could have been there for
It
that
was so
one.
funny. I remember the kids coming crying. I was teaching first grade at the time, and they were just crying. I was like, who is she? What did she do? Like, why did she die? And I was like, okay, wow. I can tell you anything you want to know about Selena now.
I bet.
Learn
I
the
love
hard
that.
way.
That is so funny.
Mhm.
So my last question before we wrap up is, I want you to tell a little bit more about your successors within the education system. Because I want other people out there to know all of the things that you have accomplished.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have a lot. She has a long list, everybody.
Well, it's not, my biggest accomplishment, I think, has been, I've done the work long enough to have students like your brother,
Right.
who are able to come back and say, you had an impact. And people have asked me, how do you know you were successful?
Right.
And I used to say, I'll know when they're successful.
Right.
But you don't think you're going to die or anything, but you just don't think that the kids are going to want to still keep in contact with you.
Exactly.
But so many of them have. And they just let me know, send me letters, and that's the beauty of Facebook, just being able to contact me and let me know, I had a kid at the TSU parade. I was just standing on the street. My house is on the route of the parade, and this little girl came up to me, and she was a young woman, and she said, "You were my 4th grade teacher,
Aww.
and I loved you so much. And guess what? I'm getting ready to be a pilot, and you helped me." And I was like, I did not remember her face, but if I was her 4th grade teacher, that was like 88, 89, 90. That was a long time ago.
Right.
So I said, well, I'm so proud of you. And I gave her a hug, and she was like, she was so proud to tell me that. So I think that I would say out of everything, it's just so many of them that were like me,
Right.
that didn't think they could believe. We helped them to believe in themselves. And so founded KIPP Liberation in Houston's 3rd Ward. When I went to the KIPP Foundation, I remember saying, if I can't open a school in my neighborhood, I don't want to open one. I'll go work for one, because that was that important to me. And it's still doing well. 14 years later, it's doing really well. Left Houston. A friend of mine told me, you should be the superintendent of schools one day, and the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you go off and do something.
Right.
So I moved to Detroit.
I remember that.
They recruited me to come. I didn't pick Detroit, so I don't want your viewers to think that I would pick Detroit, even though it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, and it was one of the best. I'd go back tomorrow.
Wow.
If I weren't a grandmother.
Right.
But opened up 2 schools there. and they're both still doing really well. I wouldn't have left if it weren't for the fact that my mother got sick.
Right.
Because this was after my sister passed, so
Right.
there was nobody else here for her. So I moved back to take care of her. And since I got back, I was able to do a lot of work with the state in helping schools stay open.
Wow.
Recovery. So I've worked with the Barnett schools, with A.W. Brown in Dallas. Good Hope had a school that we were able to save, but Harvey hit, so it didn't
Right.
stay open. But the school didn't go under, so that was a great accomplishment. It was a lot of hard work. And then in my recent, in the last couple of years, just kind of working with schools one-on-one with problems, particularly with African American students, has been a big. Last year I worked for Yes, and it was one of the best experiences also. And they were having trouble with that population at the school I was working at, and was able to really help not only the kids but the teachers see how to better bridge that gap. So just that's been it for me. Like, I've been able to help a lot of schools stay open. I'm proud of that. Very proud of that, and got a couple schools of my own under my belt. That the goal was that they outlive me. So hopefully when I'm gone, that's
the legacy will still live
can't
on.
take the founder away. And the people that have gone on to sustain the school after I left have done amazing jobs. Like, Liberation is doing great. The last school leader, the gentleman that's there now, Mr. Emilian, he also has a co-principal whose name I don't know. But the great thing about him, he worked with me in founding Liberation.
Wow.
So it's great because you still have a founding person kind of that knew the dream and the mission and the vision of what we really wanted to see happen. So it made my heart sing to hear that he was taking on that role just recently. I think he just got that role this year to kind of carry on what we started. Because he understood the magic. He understood the secret sauce. And so I'm really excited to hear that he was there doing that work. And reach out to him, go help him if he needs me to.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is phenomenal. I think your testimony, your successes really show how you don't have to be a product of your environment.
No.
Regardless of where you come from.
That was the goal, to realize that and to always tell myself that. I say it even up until now. You do not have to be, you mean anything you want to be.
Right.
But you don't have to own what your parents did, what your community did. You don't have to own it at all.
That's right.
And like I said, my mother and I, the relationship we have now is great. She's doing much better. She got baptized a couple years ago, which is awesome. And so there's hope. And forgiveness has been great. And just making sure that it didn't repeat like the past. It didn't repeat. And so working really hard to make sure that doesn't happen with my own,
breaking the generational curses.
Absolutely. So, and I would say so far so good. So I'm pretty proud of those kids.
Yeah, I'm proud of you all.
Thank you so
phenomenal.
much. Yeah, they're doing really well. Sometimes I don't like them. My colleague, my biggest fan and my colleague is my son, who is like picking up where I left off. And we go at it all the time about the work. And I call him my mini-me. But he's doing really, really well. So I'm really proud of his work. And hopefully he'll take it to a whole another level.
I'm sure he will.
I'm excited for him.
He has a big shoe to fill.
I told him that just today he had a big interview today. And I texted him this morning. I said, you're prepared, young Jedi. Go and do your thing.
That's
you got this. I need you to come. You don't need me to do anything. You got this.
That's
So just do what you know. So.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I'm excited.
And so before we end, I want you to explain to the viewers, how can they reach you? What's your contact info?
My contact info is, you can always call at 281-408-5361. Tori Moore-Cofield at the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. You can always call the church. I have my assistant. Her name is Tasha Watson. She typically answers for me, and she'll get the message to me. If you have any questions or anything you'd like to do, or if you'd like to just come visit the church, just come out and see us.
Yeah, please
some
do.
Great things going on. Some great things going on.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for another episode of Renewed Therapy with your hosts Erica Drex and Miss Tori. Thank you again. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Anytime.
All right.
All right.
Bye, guys.
I encourage all of you to find your purpose in life. I think that there's no one born without a purpose, and once you find it, you will be empowered and inspired to do great things. There's always hope. Whatever you've experienced was just a storm or a hurdle to get you to where you're going to be. So please understand that it's all about the end result. What you put out, what God has already put in you, what you need. He didn't put any of us here without a purpose. So once you tap into that purpose, ask yourself, figure it out. And it may not be anything monetary, it could be anything. But once you figure that out, you'll be so happy and you'll understand why you're here. And once you figure out why you're here, you'll be able to do amazing things.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching another episode of Renewed Therapy. Please be sure to email us if you want to be a guest on renewedtherapy@gmail.com.